uh, for which this competition we got a series of entries that we were very excited about. We are in the midst of constructing the selected entry right now. But as a way to not let this conversation sort of fade away, and sort of strengthen this whole this series of people that are thinking about the same things, at the same time, we thought we would make this event in order to sort of exchange ideas and to put forward the different achievements that we found interesting throughout the development of the competition itself. So today what we're going to have is two teams, two of the participating teams from the competition that are very generously giving us their time to share their proposals. So after these two teams, we're going to have a small discussion, after which we're going to have Andres Sanchez, which is the director of URBS Colombia. Unfortunately, just 5 minutes before the presentation, Pedro Reynolds, which was the other panelist in charge of Diversa here from Colombia, he had to cancel for some inconvenience. So we're just gonna have Andres today. But anyways, I feel that we're still gonna have a very interesting set of discussions today. So we're gonna start with Tarunya Gomini, uh, um, Tarunya Gomini, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, correct. Hi.
So, sorry, Sebastian, I think before we start, perhaps we can just very briefly introduce ourselves.
So
Okay, so I'm sure if most of you know that I mean, if you're here, perhaps we're Chaal.Chaal.Agency, and we run a small, very young practice that's about like 2, 3 years old. And we're trying our hand at looking at transformative infrastructure and social architecture. And we've been finding our own means and avenues to try and trigger small projects that can have a larger impact. That's essentially what we've been doing. And for you all, for essentially to introduce ourselves, that's Sebastian. He and me, myself, Kruti, we both co-founded this agency, and then we had Richa join us for the last almost 2.5 months now. So that's us. Yes, Richa, you want to take over?
Yeah, so first of all, the structure of the event will be loosely like this, that we'll have both the participating teams present first, then we'll just open up the discussion and the participating teams can question each other or can discuss more on their ideas, and then maybe we can see how the discussion further shapes up. So yeah, so for now, the first participating group that we have with us today is Tarunya Manjunath and Gomini. So yeah, good luck to both of you. And yeah, we may begin the presentation.
Uh, Thank you, Richa, so much for that. And we would also like to thank you guys for this opportunity that you've provided us with Project Lari to explore the different urban scenario. So we'll get right down to the presentation. Uh,
Yeah,
presentation?
yeah, we are
Yeah,
able
we
to.
can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
if you all don't mind, could you just perhaps introduce yourselves a little bit, because we
Yeah.
don't know your
yeah,
background, where you
sure.
come from.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Tarunya and myself, Gomini. Uh, she's from BMS College of Architecture, and I studied in SIT School of Architecture.
So
And
we're basically from Bangalore, and we just graduated in 2020, and both of us work in a firm called Envisage in Bangalore.
so we have like around 1 year of experience as architects. That's it. So continuing on into the presentation. Project Lari was a good opportunity for us to explore the various uh, urban streetscape in Bangalore. So we took this chance to empower women who in turn empower our society. So getting down to who is a street vendor. Actually, it's a person who offers us good or service for sale without having permanently built structure, but with a temporary structure or mobile stall. But the thing is, in our case, it so happens that we are designing for specifically for women. And this woman turns out to be an independent woman, a mother, a social activist, and also a teacher. So getting down to statistics, what we found in the Indian urban scenario was that 0.8% of our urban India population constitute of street vendors. Out of this, 20.8 constitute of just women and children who depend on street vending for their livelihood. And this is why we feel that Project Lari is a chance for us to explore and support the vendors, because when we did our research, we saw that the drawbacks was that the street carts are actually out of proportion to the women who are actually handling it, and lack of flexibility probably for them to, I mean, in case they're between businesses or between vending different things, and also poor amenities. And these current design which they have, the ones which are held by hand and pushed around by a TVS or something, they're not ergonomic actually, and they're not very climate friendly.
So like our objective was to give Pushpa Ben and other women a really nice street cart, but along with it to add a little bit of vibrancy, to our urban scape and give a character to the streetscape of India, where actually, if you think about it, India is known for these streets and then like street side stalls and things like that. So these actually play a major role in people's image creation of how they picturize or how they recollect any place in that matter in India. So we were looking at these 5 aspects of ergonomy, that is like the safety, comfort, ease of use, productivity of performance, or like how well or how versatile a product can be, and in multiple ways how they can use it and how comfortably they can use it, and also the aesthetics, which is like by character comes in street cards by the items they portray, by the decoration they do it by themselves, the customization they do, and it actually reflects them, like how they as an individual are. It's not just about how the product we give, but how they take it up and then portray it in another level. So coming to the features or how we designed our street cart, the main features which we were looking into is like the street cart is not just a place to sell, but a lot more than that. It can be a part of making activities in the evening. It can be a part of, for example, like advertising, like about them or like their other needy people, like especially in Behrampur, where there's a lot of social discrimination about the Valmiki community. Like this name boards as a space for advertisement boards can go up there, like for just in supporting them or like helping each other in their community itself, like for as they can post up any job opportunity or any other thing of that sort in the space provided above. And there are flaps that can from outside are blackboards, but then when they open up, they have become a part of the display with hooks and rods where they can put up the materials. Also becomes like a small chaja in that very sunny place, which would protect them from the climate. The bottom racks which can be used as racks for display or flip it 180 degree to become as a seating, and the bottom part, which is fixed structure, becomes like the storage where generally street vendors pack up everything, tie it up with ropes and a tarpaulin and go home. So here in case we can give them a much safer opportunity where they can put all their items into their storage units, lock up the lari and then leave it in front of their house or on the lane. So, and not just that, like off the evening hours, we know that how Pushpa Ben is such a dynamic woman who not only just thinks about herself and her economy, but is also supporting kids of her community by helping them learn and then teach and being a part of the social fabric. So we felt that this device itself could give her an opportunity to become the main source, like where she can teach them and have a seat for kids and then spread knowledge across. So that was way we could help her uplift the social condition.
Coming down to the structure, we have chosen a very simple structure. We know that the triangle is actually the most stable out of all the shapes. And it also, as it tapers toward the top, it actually helps us in reducing weight, which currently is actually a lot for Pushpa Van to handle. Also, it happens that the main framework that we have going on here is made up of MS box sections. Now, these box sections can be refurbished and they can be repainted, so they actually don't lose their strength. So Pushpa Band can easily find this in any
Markets
or scrap yards. And so when it comes to the outer material of the structure, we actually contemplated a lot between PVC pipes, plyboards and all. But when we think about the climatic conditions, I think PVC pipes are better. Also with since we've provided a solar panel at the top, I think it'll help her in the little ways, like adding a little light in her Lari and probably a small charging station. So that's how we thought the structure. It's very simple, very usable. Also, it acts very flexibly for Pushpa Band to customize it for our own in the future. So if we have to talk about materials, so we've used materials which you can easily find in scrap yards. That's PVC pipes, blackboard. It doesn't have to be a blackboard. It can be even blackboard paint, MS box sections, L angles, flats. These are easily available in metal scrap yards, and a second-hand cycle, along with some tires. So, and these PVC pipes are actually held together by small MS rods. It's actually almost like stitching. It's a fabric of the structure itself.
So when we went around, when we heard about the competition, we realized that how little we have noticed about these street cards. So we went around the streets of Bangalore and we saw how people actually combine very different things and make their own selling stations. So this was one perfect example where we felt like the woman had combined an auto and a pushing, the pushed carts and made it into like a bigger selling station where like she's sitting in and then like very comfortably selling her things. So, and the kind of things she's used, like bent hangers and literally almost many things were out of waste. So this is what we feel like the Jugaad India, where Indians can make use of very different things and come out with amazing results which we never would have thought of.
Yeah. So the thing is, no matter what we design, but the thing is the end user is always going to personalize it and is always going to change it. So it should be inculcated in our design to allow that flexibility. So when we were designing our Lari, that is what we thought about the most, is how can it be more flexible? Like, let's give her the most minimum that she needs and she can add it according to her requirements, or anyone can add it according to their requirements. Like, just like this woman has done, is that she knew her requirements, she took two pieces and she put it together on her own. So this is, I think, one of the masterpieces we found on the streets of Bangalore. And yeah, I guess this would be our main sheet that we had submitted. And yeah, that's it, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was indeed a wonderful insight from to hear from you, and even the whole aspect of flexibility and the nuances that you brought up just by showing that image. It truly resonates a lot of things with us, which we can take up in our discussion up ahead. So, like without further delay, I think first I would like to invite our second group to present, and then we and then we can start and then we can have a common round of discussion. So yeah, we have with us Madhumita, Surya Kumar, and Yash Gogri. Hi. So first of all, it would be
Hi.
really nice if you can introduce yourself to us, and then we can begin with our presentations.
My teammates are Surya Kumar, Madhumita Vasu, and myself, Yash Gogri. All three of us have just graduated from School of Architecture and Planning, Chennai. And we took up this competition as soon as we got done. So, yeah, I could just jump into the presentation right away. I'm sorry, we've been stuck up with some commitments at the moment, so we could not have done a detailed presentation. So we shall share the sheet and we shall get back to you and detail each and every part of it.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's fine.
Yeah, so our initial idea was that we perceived the brief in a couple of ways. So we realized that the brief expected us to conceive it as a an informal vending entity as well as a pedagogic tool. So our first initial brief, we broke the brief down into understanding each of them separately. So we try to understand the informal commerce that goes around in Ahmedabad and how vital it is for it to be movable and portable, and the different kinds of vending that were a part of it. So we conceived the brief in three parts. Firstly, being it as a vending entity, as a pedagogic tool, and third one as an urban furniture. Madhumita shall just break those down for you further ahead.
So we basically took our process on three main factors, as I said. First thing is Lari as a commercial entity. When I say commercial entity, we were firstly studying about what kind of objects they will be selling. So we kind of took major aspects like if they sell clothes or if they sell vegetables or jewelry or all those stuff. We made sure that the Lari is flexible enough to hold large variety of materials, and then we make sure that the design in such a way that there are more horizontal spaces for the elements to be placed. That was the first main process. The next one is Lari as a pedagogical entity. When I say pedagogical entity, the Lari it should be a tool when a workshop is been happening or some event that's been happening. So while looking at as a pedagogical element, we were looking on the holistic approach of the design, whether we have to do the vertical surfaces for the boards and all those stuff, which we'll be explaining later, the whole design of the Lari. Next thing is the Lari as a urban furniture. So Lari not only as a single entity, but when several Laris put together, we kind of made it in such a way that it forms a furniture for the whole urban the nearby context and the nearby community. If I say the workshop has been happening, a large amount of people can gather, and then they would use these four Laris to create an arrangement to create the design. So in detail of the design, we'll explain it.
Hi. So we've been talking about these three parts. So I just want, so in these three parts, how we visualize the design was we found like the most key important element of it to be, the elements of it that will make up this Lari. So when we're looking at the commercial entity, we have a lot of programmatic requirements. So in terms of store, so we looked at it in terms of store, in terms of its movement, how portable it is. So in terms of when you talk about portability, we were looking at
what kind of materials to use, what kind of wheels to use, and the visual access. So when we had a study of laris that we did within our own city. So and in most cases, what you see visually is that the first thing that you need to steer a lari is the wheeling system, the axle system, and also in terms of the visual access that you have, like as to what is ahead of you. So it was important to maintain a morphology of the lari wherein you have the visual access in front of you, and there is nothing. I mean, there aren't any visual surfaces that kind of block your view of the road. And another thing that we had to see was the storage. It had to be light enough for Pushpaben to maneuver it in such a way in these streets. So when we studied the informal markets of Ahmedabad and the kind of context that it has to be used in, we saw two typologies of laris. One being which is stationary and which gets locked up after its use at the night times and stuff like that. And another typology where we have to maneuver it around throughout the day and sell it at different neighborhoods in different poles. And so that was another typology that we looked at. So in case of both of these typologies, we wanted to ensure that the lari kind of catered to both. So in that case, there had to be a storage unit for them to lock it up at times of non-use. And another feature was that it had to be lightweight as well. So that was kind of the determining criteria for the size of the storage and what material we use. So yes, could you zoom into the detail part of it?
Yeah.
The element details. So when we were looking at, so there was another interesting feature that I would like to mention. So one thing that we explored a lot was if we are using a lari in terms of, looking at it as an urban furniture, it had to be looked at all times of usage. So what we kind of did a study as to how it would be used in times of like heavy usage in the morning, in terms of in the afternoons where say Pushpaman is taking some time off and if she needs to rest in her lari, and if there are going to be companions who accompany her in the lari, and in the evening times when there's going to be a rush and you need a lot of display area and display area, and you need more of an area, surface area coverage in a particular market. And another thing was we also looked at the shade point of view, where if you use it in the afternoons, what kind of shade has to be required and how it will extend to the companions as well. So that was one thing that we did, and so that was how we looked at it in the urban context. So when we're using the lari in terms of morning and night, we also saw how it could be used as a shared infrastructure. So to cater to that feature, it was important that the lari could be used used by Pushpaben in the morning for say selling her selling like clothes and accessories, and say in the night if there was going to be a panwala or if it's going to be like an ice cream vendor who wants to use just the platform. So it could be used as a sharing entity as well. So it was important to be able to aid that multifunctionality in terms of storage and in terms of modularity. So if you can see that the storage unit over here in the display is divided into two. So we kind of ensured that it could be used by more than one person, and that could also aid in Pushpaben's as an economic opportunity as well. And so the next thing that another feature of the design that I would like to talk about is the folding panel, which is quite obvious on the presentation as well. So when we were talking about enclosures within, we were talking about like Lari and its enclosure in the market and in wherever it is placed, there are different typologies that you can see. So even in existing laris of today, we have tarpaulins extended to like electric poles or trees and tied onto them to extend the area when required, and more vertical displays done just by adding strings and tying them up to different vertical poles, etc. So in order to, we kind of imbibed from that, and what we created with that was like a folding panel sort of a thing. And that folding panel not only acted like a vertical surfaces where you can display your items, but also we had in mind the pedagogical feature as well. So in that way, it could aid us some like hanging boards, for hanging any kind of awareness campaigns or anything that we would like to hold, which would also aid in informing the surrounding, in also creating to any activity of an educational nature with the Lari itself and how Pushpaben could use it. And so adding to that was another extension, which was the seaters. So when we were designing these panels and the storage units, we also saw that it could be modular. Then some parts of it could be used as seaters while also functioning as a Lari, like as a commercial entity. So like lots of parts, I mean, the parts of these panels were also, divided as like a mesh unit and also as seaters, which could be folded out, to enable it as an urban furniture. And this is not only particular to this Lari. And when you replicate such Laris over a market, you would also get a lot of interchange or exchange of exchange of furniture, which could be used for other Laris as well, and it will form kind of an enclosed, but also open to other, interact with the other Laris as well. So this was the primary idea. So if you could see in the visuals how we kind of iterated what with scales. So it would be like one Lari by itself, how it could change in its view, and so that is there on the sheet as well. And you could see how multiple Laris kind of form an arrangement like my teammate just spoke about. And how like the shade also could be extended is something that you could see in this as well. So this was, in terms of the materials, what we iterated on majorly was to enable it being lightweight. Because we had this panel feature, we had to look at lighter materials and inexpensive materials, but could also kind of provide a sturdy platform for sitting and for display as well. So we went with these HDF boards, which could be used as panels which can open out, and could also be designed to create independent seaters if required. And for the roofing, since we were looking at how lightweight and portable it needs to be, we were looking at tarpaulin sheets, but also aiding in waterproof, which is pretty much what we have been seeing over over our city for these Laris as well. And so which has been working to a great extent in terms of the weather conditions, but also in terms of its lightweight and its extending feature. So that's pretty much.
Another point which we had to mention was regarding the roof, which could be openable, and the lever system was placed at a height which can be easily accessed by Pushpa Ben. That's why we had a truss structure in which she could just move it, and the Lari would, like, if you look at the MS box sections here, we integrated the roof truss structure along with it, so that with just one push of lever, which is in the height of Pushpa Ben's reachability, she could open and close the roof structure as well. And the wheels that got used, which we had initially planned, were auto or 12-inch 360-degree wheels in such a way that they can easily maneuver around streets, but at the same time, they are not as small as trolley wheels for them to get damaged on the tar roads of the Indian streets. So I think pretty much the three of us have summed up the entire design. Madhu and Surya, do you have anything else to add?
So it's just basically got us, the project basically got us rethinking of how informal vending and the urban infrastructure could add to the fabric, and how by rethinking it in terms of its morphology and design could, change the physical character of the streets as well. So that was sort of a takeaway for us. And so I just like to end by saying that.
Thank you so much for your presentation. And once again, even your presentation brought in a lot of different aspects, and like how the first presentation put forward the idea of flexibility. Now here we see in your presentation the whole different perspective of the idea of flexibility. So there were so many common aspects, like even right from how you are perceiving it in the context of just being recent graduates, and how you are and how you interpreted the Project Lari brief. So I think that common tangents in both the presentation are really puts in forefront a very good discussion to start with. And yeah, I further ask Kruti, Sebastian, to carry forward the discussion. And
Yes. Thank you. I think thank you both the teams. Firstly, we do truly appreciate the fact that you all are taking out the time to come and do something like this, which generally with competitions, once you're done, you can like kind of brush it aside. But we demanded this from you, but you also responded back, which makes us feel like, it's great to have these conversations ahead. We have Andres who's joined us as well. Andres, hi, are you there?
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Andres, how are you? We're good.
Thank
So
you for inviting me.
yes, I would like to sort of briefly introduce Andres to everyone. So Andres is an architect and he's the co-creator of Herbs Colombia, which Sebastian mentioned earlier as well. Andres has had the experience, has had experience in development management and construction of facilities, public spaces, and house improvement through participatory processes and bioconstruction techniques with communities. He's done a master's studies in architecture and sustainable development from the Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium. And he also has done a master's in sciences and techniques of urban environments from ENSA Nantes, France. He currently is a professor and researcher in various faculties of architecture, and he's presently pursuing his PhD in architecture at the Doctoral School of Humanities, Political and Territorial Science at the Grenoble School of Architecture in France. Um, He's also linked to the Crescent Laboratory on topics focused on recognizing the social dynamics around the conformation of spaces in self-managed settlements. And he's done fieldwork across various countries like Colombia, India, Brazil, Bangladesh, South Korea, Thailand, South Africa, and so on. And Andres, we would like to welcome you to this session. We thank you so very much for taking out the time again for us, and this collaboration that we started with Herbs and Chaal.Chaal.Agency as part of Project Lari. We hope to build on that further and with today and tomorrow's session. So thank you again, Andres.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Sebastian, should we start the session?
The what, sorry?
The discussion with the teams.
Sure. We can, otherwise what we can do is hear out Andres' presentation and maybe have a final discussion at the end.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you for inviting me again. So the idea is to share with you some specific project we are developing in Colombia. It's about a community center we developed with in an informal settlement. We start URBS in 2016 after have the experience to know the work of URBS in Mumbai and in Brazil also. So the idea is in URBS in Colombia is to support and also to design some community project with different communities in Colombia. So I'm going to share my screen to present the project. It's okay? Are you watching my screen?
Yes, yes,
Yes. Okay, so this project was the first project we started in URBS in Colombia. And this project is located in the largest informal settlement in the center of the country, is Casuca. And I'm going to present the context, a bit of the history of the neighborhood, some project we are developing with the community, and after the development of the specific project for the community center. So this settlement at the beginning was on a farmer, but in 2050, in 1960, 1970, start an important process of migration of people from the rural areas to the city, to Bogota, the capital city, because two factors. One was the violence, because we live in a civil war for a long time, and many people were displaced from the rural areas to the cities, and also for economical reasons, just to find work in the city. So at the beginning was a farmer, but with the time, and because it's very close to Bogota, we are working in Soacha. Soacha is a majority who is very close, is a town who is very close to Bogota. And the expansion of this town was in the south area of the city. And most of the people who come to live here was migrants who start to make his houses in the mountains. No, this picture is the 1978, and this was in 2007. You can see this was the land was a land who occupied in a small part, but now is occupying I think the 90% of the mountain. So Bogota is in this place. Bogota is the capital of Colombia. It's a city of 8 million of inhabitants. And in this side, we find Soacha, who is another town who is close to Bogota. We have the highway south in this side. In this part, we can find a lot of social housing projects, and in this mountain is the occupation of the informal settlements. We are working in this place, who is Altos del Pino, and to arrive to this place, we have to take Transmilenio, who is the main system, the BRT system in Bogota, the main transport. And after we take another bus to arrive in 10 minutes to this place. So this is the connection with Transmilenio. We can find here many commerces, and we take this kind of buses to go into the neighborhood. We can also see, like in India, different kind of transport, like rickshaws or buses. And we, after to take the bus, we arrive to this place. In this place, we start to walk. So you can see what is the characteristic of this place. There are informal houses building for the people. And the people in Colombia use more concrete structures and bricks. So some streets are in a difficult and in a bad condition, but another street are in better condition. And we start to walk in this side to arrive to the neighborhood. And you can see also what is the development of the houses. The houses start with recycled material, but in the time the houses start to grow, no? This is in this place, this house is the principal community point now, because many of the action developed in this neighborhood are developed for a family who has developed community process for more than 20 years. And this family start to make some courses for the kids, cultural activities, sports, to improve the condition of the children in this neighborhood. But the main point of meeting in this neighborhood is this house. And when I arrived in the first time to the neighborhood, the community say that they need more spaces to develop the different activities. Now the community are building this space. We find also this space who is in this side, who is building for the community. And this is the place we are working now. So in the neighborhood, we can find different community facilities developed for the people. We have a community kitchen. We have urban agriculture. Also, the people use the empty land to make different projects of urban agriculture. We also develop different activities to build different projects. And after 4 years, we have developed a different kind of project, like improving houses, like public spaces, like small facilities and small microarchitecture. And this is how the houses start to take some land, and also how the people start to use some places to urban agriculture. So sometimes it's in small spaces, but sometimes it's in and big spaces they can find in the neighborhood. There are some views of some photos of the neighborhood. This is the neighborhood we are working now. We can find this kind of development who are different neighborhoods. Kasuka, the name of this place, is a very big district who have more than 33 neighborhoods. And we are working in Alto del Pino, who is a neighborhood inside this place. So when we arrived to work with this community, the community have developed many activities, cultural activities. They have developed activities also to find resources to develop different projects. And also they have cultural activities in the neighborhood. So the problem in the moment we arrived to this place is they don't have the appropriate spaces to develop all these activities. So when we arrived in 2016, we start to work with the community in a public space. We make different workshops with the community and students and professionals who want to participate in this kind of activities. And also, this was the first project who was an public space. After this project, we will community toilets, who was this project. But most of the projects and most of the action we are developing in the neighborhood are collaborative and are about in process of auto construction, and also most of the activities are developed with the community, no? Who is important the participation of community in the different process. So in this space, who like the house we showed at the beginning, who was the house of the family, is this. Now we are developing the activities in this place. We find also this small space who was building for the community. This was the first project we built in 2017, who was the community, who was a public space with urban agriculture. This is a small library developed for the community. This is the toilets we developed in 2018. And the new project I'm going to show you now is a cultural center who is in this place. Is to the extension of this space. We want to build the second floor to use for the cultural activities. So how was the process to develop this project? The first part was to understand what is the what were the team and what were the actors involved in this project. So in this project, there are many community leaders, there are many people who participate in different kind of process. There are students, there are also professionals. And the second part was trying to understand the context, what we're going to build and why and where. And we start a process to organization with the community. The second part was to identify the problem and also the opportunities we have to, the problems and the opportunity to develop this project. After we start a community participation process with the committees involved in all the level of the project, no? In all the decision, also in the design of the project. After we start to find the resource for this project. In this part to find the resource for the project, the committee was the main actor because they make the connection of his organization inside the neighborhood with different international and local organizations who can to give economical resource to develop the project. After we develop the project, we start the construction and the final design of the project. So in this project, we to develop this kind of project, we use a lot of the experience of the neighborhood, of the people in the neighborhood. So this is kind of activities they have developed for long time, like agriculture, like there are builders, so they know very well the different kind of techniques to develop the project. We use in all the projects natural material like bamboo, like herb to construct the project, because it's more easy in these processes that the people participate. It's more difficult when we use some specialized technique of construction that the people participate in the process. So this is a pedagogic tool for us to involve the people, and also to us to learn about this kind of techniques. We make workshops in the neighborhood, and we develop the project with them. Many people for the neighborhood of people who can to participate are involved in the project, and also is a space to learn about different kind of processes, no, like construction, like management of the project, how to find the resource, and also it's opportunity for the people who don't live in the neighborhood to understand what is happening there. So for this project, the most important was to work in the language, trying to find a common language for everybody, not a technical language like sometimes architects and urban planners use to show the project. Here was important to find a common language to implement the different kind of tools to develop the project. We will different collage with the community, trying to see how the community imagine this project, no, and what kind of activity they want to develop in this project. This was the first image of the project we developed with the community. Is the first thing we developed was the structure. It's a structure in bamboo, and after to develop the structure, we start to work in another in the image of the project, in the facade, and was a very long process, but the committee was always present in this discussion and the main decision. It's a very sample space. No, we start to develop some plans with the community to see what was the most important in the project. The most important was to generate an open space who led to the people to develop different kind of activity, cultural activities, and also some spaces to use for another activities. So it was a very simple program, but this program was discussed with the community many times to trying to arrive to the correct project for the community. We share different knowledge because some people in the neighborhood have experiences in different kind of areas, especially in construction. So they decide how to improve some part of the design. So this is a long time we will with the community. Some we can say I don't to show all this that, but is to say that the community have different activities about cultural actions in the neighborhood. We start in 2012 they start to develop cinema activities and some and some workshop with the kids about how to make documentaries. So in the history of this process is the project is supported, no, it's not a new project who we as architects create to the community. No, is the community have a history and have also activities developed about cultural activities, and in these activities and these needs the project was supported, no. So they have developed different kind of activities in the neighborhood. We try to use all these activities and all this experience to develop the project. We have the opportunity to visit another project in another neighborhood, who is Potosine, who was also a project, a community in another neighborhood, who the community built a community cinema. And we went there and we talked with the people in this neighborhood, and they share their experience about this project. They give to us some ideas, and with this experience also we can to improve the project we were developing with the community in Altos del Pino. In the pandemic, in the last year, in the pandemic was very difficult. The project stopped for more than 7 months, but in November of the last year, we went to the neighborhood to discuss with the committee what we think about the continuity of the project, and we decided to continue this year. And we finished the project, the designs 2 weeks ago, and this project we're going to build in the next month. This is the place we are working now. This is the location of the cinema. We have the public toilets here. And the idea also is to improve all this public space because many activities happen in this place. So we will, with the community, some collage about what we can do in this place. We also develop with the committee some small architecture and a small dispositive or gadgets to improve the public space. And also we make different discussion with them about what was the continuation of this project and how to develop it. So these are ideas we develop with the community. We use a lot of collage because they led to the people to imagine what we can happen in the neighborhood. We're trying to understand what kind of vegetation we can use in the place and the characteristic of this vegetation to improve and improve the landscape. We find some potential spaces to improve and to develop different kind of public spaces. And we develop with the community some collage to see what can happen in each of these spaces. So this kind of small spaces who are very important for the community because this space in the facade are the main space to share with the community. Many people make different activities in this place of the facade. The urban agriculture continue to be very important for the community, and that was very important for the community, especially in the pandemic situation. No, why? Because the problem in this informal settlements was also how to have food because they can work in the pandemic. No, so most of these people are working in the informal economy. And in the pandemic, they can work, so they start to develop and thinking about how to produce their own food in the neighborhood. This is another, sorry, my computer is a bit slow. And after to make the collage with the people, we start to develop the plans. We start to develop the details about how to build the structure in an easy way. And all these are manuals for the community to develop the project. So we use different kind of material. We propose some vegetation for the project. And this is the first image we developed with the community the last year to make the community center. But after a discussion this year, we start to change a lot of the facade. We start to change the size of the project and we start to improve the condition of the place. And this a map of all the activities the community want to develop. No, is for some trying to improve the education and to support some activities for the children, like a cinema, dance, and music, some meetings of the community, and another activities. So the program was very the building has to be very open and very flexible to develop all these activities the community are developing now. This was the first image of the project. We discussed with another specialist in different areas like bioclimatic, like the electrical design, like different kind of people who was give recommendation about the project. We make some interior image of the interior, and we start to develop the project with the material, the program to was very flexible to activities, and also the thermal comfort inside the building. All this process was supported with many professionals who give his advice about how to develop the project. And the structure was a structure in bamboo who support all the activities inside. Was a project who we trying to done to be very flexible to develop the activities. The facade also are in different materials. And in the final project was this project. This is the project who we start to build the next month. You can see the facade change a lot, but the important to know was the interior don't change a lot. The activities we can we make an open space to support all the activities of the community. The structure don't change too much because was the main this is going to support the different activities, and also because this structure is very cheap and is very easy to build. And the final result of this process was this building. So the facade changed a lot because many people give the advice about illumination, thermal comfort. The community decide to use another material, and we start to change the project. So this is the final idea of the project. This is the interior of the project. This is a group we use with the community where they can share many ideas. For example, the community share, no, this is the structure, how we're going to develop the structure, but the community decide to trying to use this kind of walls inside. So in this group, we discuss with the community about what kind of material, what kind of structure we can use, some ideas. So the communication in this group is very important because there are many people, and we can share some ideas, and we can show what we can do inside the building. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Andres, so much. I think that was very illustrative and very contributes a lot to the conversation. Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So I think we can have a small space for discussion. Perhaps I would like to kick it off by just pointing out a couple of things from the presentations. I think one of the most interesting things that Tarunya and Gomini presented, for me at least, was this whole idea of Jugaad innovation, of how do you sort of depart from these mechanics and these mechanisms of confronting materiality, and how do you sort of resolve to certain conditions that are available in your environment to resolve quickly certain problems in a clever manner, in an extremely resourceful and intelligent way. And I think that clearly reflects in their proposition. And I think that's certainly something that it sort of contributes to the overall sort of architectural and material appointments of, you know, not only Indian urbanity but also what's happening currently in the global south, right? Similarly, I think something that also was for me very interesting, that and it was from the time that they presented their entry. I'm talking about Madhumita, Surya's, and Yash's proposal. Was how, firstly, the spatiality of their proposal. There is not simply, an object, a self-contained object that is, that is self-standing or whatever, that is independently sitting on the street, but rather is this sort of progressive or more of an incremental architecture that sort of grows and adapts to different functions. And I think that in itself is quite interesting. Also, it was quite beautifully drawn and represented. So I think that also adds a lot of value to the proposal. Um, Finally, in terms of Andres's presentation and work, which I mean, we've always been big admirers of what URBS does, not only in India but throughout. We're very close to what happens in Colombia. So in this case, uh, what I believe is quite interesting is how do you sort of construct this ecosystem of social initiatives, or rather, how do you plug in from your particular set of skills or your expertise? In this case, how there's this support from an infrastructural perspective, wherein existing social activities and these sort of political appointments are manifested or are more or less concretized through specific architectural and infrastructural projects that are again connected to these sort of decentralized, community-based manners. Um, and of course, sort of understanding how do you solve a problem, not necessarily from this standardized perspective where at every point the response is the same, but rather how do you address the diversity of circumstances through different scales, through different materialities, and through different approaches that are sort of recollecting, a great diversity of inputs. So yeah, in that case, I would just like to again thank the three um, for the three presentations, let's say, um, and so yeah.
Before I think we comment further, if I would also like to open up the platform to the audience or like the people who are attending this session to check whether they would like to, share their thoughts or perhaps have some questions to the three presentations that were done. We're happy to sort of take this conversation ahead. We want to use this opportunity to precisely start that conversation. So if anybody has, questions or thoughts, please either feel free to unmute yourself and ask it, or if you're uncomfortable in a large audience and you're shy, you can leave it on the chat box and we can read out your thought or question. While I let you all do that, I would like to also share my thoughts. I think um, Tarunya and Gaumani, I think it's very clear as to, for us, when we were looking at all of the proposals that had come in, and for us, the fact that the two of you were very sensitive to the way that you were thinking about the life of this woman and change that she can trigger in that larger urban space was something that we found very interesting. Which is something that today, while you were also explaining it, came through very strongly in your presentation, which was quite nice to be able to see and hear both of you. I do have one question. When the both of you decided to do this sort of pedal rickshaw kind of a format, wherein there is a cycle and there's a lari attached to it, what was sort of your thought process to pick that format of a lari? If you, I don't know if you all debated about it, it would be interesting to hear that.
Actually, before we landed up on this final design that we've presented to you, I think we went through a lot of changes previously. So one of the formats that we explored was the hand-drawn Lari. But I think the issue we found is that the taller we went, the more amenities we tried to give her, the more heavier the structure would come for her to handle, for her to maneuver on the roads of India. So keeping that, and we've also, I mean, we've talked to a lot of street vendors, and most of the women, the feedback that they gave us with the current carts that they were using was that it is heavy. No matter what you put on it, even the lightest of their whatever they're selling, even that would become heavy. So we thought, why not move away from a hand-on? And it's actually very easy to maneuver it through by adding a cycle.
Anything on wheels generally, is easy to push or pull. So the major problem what they were facing was not when they're going straight, but when they actually had to take a turn or like pass over a hump. So that's where like their major difficulties were. Otherwise, they would, once the start momentum was gained, then they would actually not feel it much difficult to go through a straight road. But if the given the conditions of Indian roads, like the number of potholes or the number of humps or the condition of the roads, it's not as easy that if you just give a dhakka and then like you let go. No, that's not the case. So that's when we thought, no, this hand push thing should go away. And the easiest or the simplest and the cheapest way which we could find was using a women's cycle, which already the women's cycle is already designed for their anthropometry. So why not like take a second-hand cycle and then like retrofit a little bit and use it in the design. So that was how we landed there.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you point this out because right now with the winning team, we had a workshop I think around in January with Saloni from Seva, and she brought out this very interesting point that in most cases when women are using the handcarts, they end up using their abdomen to push the cart, which is not very great for them with respect to the health. Which is it's such a it's something that almost goes unnoticed. You do it on a day-to-day basis, but you realize that it has a long lasting or like the repercussions of it is something that you feel later. So from that perspective, that's I think that's also why we thought that the fact that you all chose to take up a cycle is something that we found very interesting, and when we were looking at all the various proposals. So I do commend both of you for that. Thank you. Um,
Thank you.
would anybody have questions for Tarunay and Gaun by any chance? It's very quiet. Okay, but I actually would be interesting also to hear what the other team thought about their design. So like Surya, Madhumita, Yashif, you all have some thoughts about design because this is also the first time you're hearing each other out.
So initially, I think we did have, we had the same discussion earlier about what mechanism do we use for them to move around. We spoke about maneuvering. We spoke about the same weight being added and it being difficult for Pushpa Bain to push. But we actually ruled out the idea of bicycle, thinking that it would be really hard for an Indian woman with their attire of sari to be be comfortable riding a bicycle on the streets. So that's why and plus understanding how they usually move around, they move like a couple of yards ahead and then they park their stall again. They went for a little time and then they move ahead. So it's in a during the entire course of the day they move a little bit. So I thought it wouldn't. We thought that wouldn't be a really hard thing for them to just move around, and which is why I think we provided. And about the maneuvering part, we decided to provide these 360-degree wheels, which would make it easier for them to move on the roads and easier to maneuver because they move in all axes. And the fact that we use the thicker auto tires for that because the roads of the Indian roads are very harsh because of the potholes, etc. So it must be easier, and for greater stability, we decided to use these wheels. So this is what our ideation came from. Just wanted to share it with all of you.
Yeah, so definitely. we were looking at how we had to. I mean, in a part of the cycle thing, which is what actually we kind of that was the last kind of decision that we had to take to move whether we had to opt for the cycle or for the wheels was kind of a ongoing debate until the end. So so that was actually what we noticed first and most in their design as well. So I mean, we were looking at how for pedagogy it was like they were using these vertical surfaces in terms of its closure, and which also we found to be very I mean, we found to be aligning with. So that was another aspect that we found interesting.
Okay. So with respect to the cycle thing, I think something very interesting that we, like Sebastian and I have also been trying to experiment is to how to kind of motorize it, because what you guys are also pointing out is very true. No matter how easy that sort of pedaling movement will be, the minute you have like that load at the back, it does become difficult. So from that perspective, I think the next step that we also want to try and push for is the idea of like motorizing and making it easy. And we are also seeing a lot of these jugaad solutions that a lot of vendors have themselves also come up with, so which is quite interesting.
So, and I have another question for you regarding what you were just saying. So, is it just about the pedaling and the weight, but also, so like the nature of selling on a like a lari is like when you keep pushing, would you want like the goods or your cart to be in front of you or behind you was also another aspect that we thought should be considered, because when you're trying to sell your goods and like looking around to maneuver and sell, somehow the aspect of having the goods which are selling in front of you and pushing them was something that stuck more than having it like as a, because when you're selling it at different intervals, you tend to get down and then look at the products as well and then get back on it, then sell it and then maneuver to another spot and then get down as well. So it kind of, the selling aspect of the lari itself and on motion itself kind of, I thought that was something that, should be considered when we're looking at the cycle model of a lari.
Do you guys have a response? Sorry, I don't want you all to like turn into a fight or anything. Just, I'm curious.
Yeah, no, but that's actually a very valid point.
Yeah,
what they're talking
actually.
about is having the goods in the front.
But when we thought of this design, what we thought was she's not going to constantly keep moving is what we thought actually. So what we thought was she's going to move to a place, settle down, sell, pack up, leave. So that was going in our minds actually.
So you, if you look at these ice cream walas, like who actually have the ice cream cart in front and still like sit and move around, is one way of dealing with it. But when we thought of that, the ice cream cart is actually very small. Or even the corn vendors, like when the cart is in the front and they can actually attach a motor and cycle it in front. It's a very small piece that is in the front, and then you can sit back and still look at the streets and move around. But when we thought about having a little bigger items, like for selling clothes and things, where you need a lot of display space, one thing we found it difficult was to accommodate it in the front and help Pushpa or any other woman to see the streets and then go when we put it in the front. So this thought did cross our minds, but yeah, we thought of like that chances of going on the way and selling the items would be much less when compared to stationing it in one place and then like selling it. So that's how we
ended up putting
it
the
in
unit at the back.
And coming to the motorizing it, we actually looked at it, but the budget constraint was the one thing that asked us not to go to the motor part, because that we would be exceeding it. But there are many engineering students, as we've seen, who
have motorized the cycle,
or who in their projects have tried out these jugaad ways to come up and then like do things. Like it's a very good thing if if we could actually collaborate with few of these engineering students who could help us like reduce the cost and then help us motorize it and then use it on our.
So even if we don't like team up with engineering students, there's this Indian vehicle TVS, which is very famous among vendors. Actually, that is very economic, very budget friendly for the street vendors. They can hook it up to that. But because of the cost constraint, we considered the cycle instead.
You know, I think the first time that I saw a motorized pedal rickshaw was in Delhi, wherein, basically there is the rickshaw where you can sit behind and someone pedals you for your short distances. So that's when I actually saw them motorized and they did nothing. So it was the cycle, it was the space for the passengers to sit. And what they did is on the seat below the passenger seat, they put like a battery and they hooked up like wires and they put like a small motor and then they would just cruise, like they would just sit and they would take us. And it was very fascinating. That was the first time that I saw that happen without necessarily changing anything of the design. So, not really going into very heavy. So I think perhaps that's a good place to even start a research, like if we're all interested eventually at some point. Um, so I just want to also kind of congratulate Yash, Surya, and Madhumita. I think you guys put up a very, very interesting design. I think if I'm not wrong, you guys are very close to making the cut. Um, and when we saw your design, we thought it was very interesting because it was highly compact, but also once you open it up completely, it can expand to whatever kind of space that is available to the vendor. And I thought that was a very, very good call that both of you took. And the fact that you all also minimize the weight, wherein you just have these very thin panels that you just by arranging it at right angles or at different angles, you stabilize the structure, but they're still very lightweight. And I think that was a very good design decision that you all took, and I thought that was great. Um, yeah, good. Congratulations to both the teams for brilliant designs that came up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would Gaumini and Tanya have anything for the other team?
Yeah, actually, when you guys were explaining your design, we feel it's really great what you guys have come up with, especially with the lightweight panels, which would have crossed our mind actually. But yeah, and I think the truss system and the tarpaulin sheet, which you guys have considered, was a really good idea and a very economic one also. Instead of something a very fixed structure, I think it's very easily available in case of replacement or anything of such. And your 360-degree wheels, I think that's the genius part of the structure. And when you show the image of one structure along with other structure opened up, we felt it's creating its own community, its own enclosure where people are invited, and it has its own characteristic, which is there in all of Indian streets. If we have noticed, I think in every state we have this one street where it has its own character, and I think your guys' design has that capability of creating its own new character, which will add to the Indian streetscape. So it was I enjoyed your design thoroughly.
Yeah, and I
So,
think the kind of sorry, Surya.
oh, no, I just said thank you.
I think what I find very also this just to take forward the point that Gaumini you mentioned, I think it's this sort of characteristics are also very flexible. Like they've given a lot of flexibility as well, because eventually I can just take the framework of your entire Lari and change the infills based on what I wish to do or my own budget. So eventually, each Lari is still going to look very different, which means that we're still going through this more diverse, like we're providing that option of diversity rather than making like a monotonous format of that design, which I think is also another master stroke there. Andres?
So like that cost the sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Madhu. I think there's a lag on my side. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that like looking at what was really interesting about these different laris in the street itself is the diversity and how even if the base structure of the lari is the same, how people adapt to it and use the different materials, bring out the uniqueness of each of the lari, and that itself kind of creates a character. So uh, I mean that since that was the interesting part of what we found in the market itself, I mean, we just thought that this could be, adapting to it and kind of imbibing the same character onto it.
Thank you. Andres, I just wanted to ask if you would want to share your thoughts. I know you were there just for the second presentation. Perhaps we lost it.
Perhaps.
Okay, anyways. Sebastian, do you have anything else to say, or Richard?
Well, I think I already made my comments. So, Rich, I don't know if you want to add something.
Yeah, I think there was a pretty interesting discussion. Though one thing I'm very curious about to know is that how did both the teams looked at the economic aspect? I mean, what were the thoughts and discussions that went behind while considering the budget, the whole aspect of budget constraint? Like, what are the kind of nature of discussion that you had within your group mates? Because I think that would be the most challenging and tricky part in terms of negotiations and the usage of materials. So I think that would be a pretty interesting thing to know from your end.
Yeah, because we already made it very tight, the budgets. Yeah.
But I think that was the driving force to look at different materials. Like we ruled out a number of materials because of the cost and because of the weight and because of its adaptability to weather. But cost was the top of the chart. Like you think about any item, is it in the budget? No, then it's ruled out. So I think because of this cost factor that we actually looked into a number of materials and came up with PVC pipes. Like that was
More durable and easily available ones. And
it
then
was a very last moment thing,
correct.
but
And we majorly considered refurbished items because of the cost constraint. Also, we actually sat down one of our vendor aunties and we talked to her for a whole day about how much would you spend on this, how much would you spend on that, and if I gave you this kind of structure, would you spend more on refurbishing it with your own money, or would you just stick to what we have given you? So I think when, especially by making the BOQ, the bill of quantities, we went through a number of items and we've explored new items, and that the possibility of a PVC pipe or a plywood coming into our design. So yeah, I think that was one of the main driving. I think we went crazy with the BOQ.
For us, like what mainly, this was like the most thing. So we had to explore so many materials and look at what materials would actually fit the budget was like the biggest constraint, like they just said. So kind of that's like very. And another thing was, what would you prioritize with the kind of budget that you have? So we were looking at designs for, like, say, when we were looking at the roof elements, when we were looking at the storage. So we were looking at what mechanism would you prioritize. So we had a bunch of ideas, but we had like the budget for like only a few. And so we had to look at whether, we really wanted the roof to be of this particular material, or could be like, do with tarp itself. So that kind of prioritizing was like driven by the cost itself. So we were just like, the ideas itself started to change nature, where we started to prioritize if this element is more important to LRE, or the moving element of it, or the wheels. So that kind of changed our perspective itself on how we looked at Lari in terms of its cost and in terms of its materials. So yeah.
I think then picking on that, I think would like to just ask one more thing, because I'm really curious. that once like reading the brief, and there would be certain ideas that would have developed in your head, and like after research and after all these discussions and after talking with the vendors and actually realizing what the problems are, where the problems are in their existing scenarios. So after your proposal, like I would like to ask and know what were the main key takeaway points like from this Lari. So how do you now look at these Lari, these streetcars, and how do they become an important part for our urban landscape or for urban scape?
So if we have to answer that, actually, before, when we used to see streetcars, we used to go eat or buy whatever we want and just come back. But now, what after reading the brief of Project Lari and after getting into discussions with numerous people and after exploring on whatever, like especially when we're traveling and we see streetcars, we would keep eyeing them like what is new in this that we have to learn. So I think me and Tarunya, we've
And not just in Lari, it's like, when we went around, like after this project brief came up and how the cost cutting and how to accommodate things, like every site visit we did in our project, like we were looking at how, not just vendors, but carpenters managed to have electrical switchboards in their ply and just putting their wires in. Like, you don't really have to have a switch box, proper electrocution done and then put a plug and then you put a socket and then like have an adapter and then you're saying no. They just like have 3 holes in a plywood box and then put wires in. Like that was done. So like not just in cards, we started observing and looking at things in small things and everyday things.
Especially, I think that's when we came up with this point of Jugaad India is that no matter, I think there is like 1 or 2 prototypes of streetcars, but then when you see them together or when you see them individually, you will know that they're personalized to whatever vending the person does. May it be food, may it be selling clothes, and there are these little details and personalization that they add, which are actually very important. And so that helps us actually recognize these cards from a far off distance. So I think that's how.
That's the biggest takeaway. We just learned that if you want, it can be done. Like it can be done to whatever cost and whatever need. So
Most of our learning and designing happened from the streets itself and from the design brief too.
What about the other team?
Yeah, for us, this whole project itself gave another idea for us. As in, this incidental commerce has been a part of our culture, as part of our Indian culture in so many years. If you see how the commerce activities happen in these local areas, these incidental things have been a part of us. So it's a good thing that we consider them as a part of the design. And then, and one good thing about the Lari is, as it is movable and then it doesn't create a negative impact on the whole urban scale of the urban scale. And it is also good. We felt good that they are designing. We are not ignoring them for other reasons, which I don't know, but I mean, I'm saying that we felt good that we are designing for such good ideas, good intentions, and the idea that the learning that we got from this whole project was really made an impact on us.
And we were also like involved in a couple of, when we looked at urban design, so we were actually, like, we had just completed an urban design semester in our college, and then when we did this project, or when we saw this project, so that kind of sort of made us look at informal commerce itself as as an element which had to be considered when we have like urban design happening. So it's, when we look at pavements, it's not just an obstruction, or it's not just an obstruction for pedestrian movement anymore, but it's an element that needs to be considered while you design. So because they make an important part of the urban scape. So that was one of the learnings, because when certain streets, when we were involved in designing those, we would just like look at the shops that like the built structures behind it, the roads and the movement of people and cars. But informal commerce would just, as vital a presence it is, could be easily ignored. But with this competition, I think that also sort of became more significant and more important, that it needs to be included in as a part of a holistic design. So that was one of the other takeaways.
Okay, awesome. Um, should we wrap up the session? If nobody else has anything to say, we can wrap up for this today. If possible, if both the teams, if you all can come tomorrow, it'll be great as well. You'll be able to see 4 more designs tomorrow, and perhaps we'll have a more intense conversation tomorrow as well. Great. It was nice to have the people who attended this. I hope you all found this as interesting as we did and the teams did. And yeah, I think that's. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andres.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andres. You can